This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803-427-5944.
For the for the video to start. But yeah, man, I'm excited to talk to you about this because these are topics that really interest me. I think when we were first talking, I told you I was meditating for a while there consistently.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, life just kind of happened and I just kind of got out of the groove of it. But I miss it though. I do miss meditating. I miss kind of the I think the clarity that came from it. You know,
Totally.
It was just taking a minute to just kind of like, process things and just kind of clear your mind almost.
Yeah.
It was definitely beneficial though. I do. And I want to get back in the groove of it. I keep saying that, but I have yet to do it. So, but I was at a point, I was probably meditating for like 15, 20 minutes at a time, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually kind of difficult to do like uninterrupted, 15, 20 minutes.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, it's really one of those things that it takes practice getting into the, into that kind of setting where you can be doing that every time and doing the sitting down for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever else. And I think a lot of times, if you're wanting to get back into it or into it in general, you're better off putting it, starting out with that 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can go longer, fantastic. But if you don't, then at least you've done 5 minutes,
Right.
Rather than, because I know for myself, sometimes 15, 20 minutes can seem really overwhelming. And then if it seems overwhelming, then I'm less likely to do it. Something else has happened, something's come up, whatever else.
Right.
That 20 minutes is, maybe I'll do it later, never end up doing it later. And then it just doesn't get done.
Mm-hmm.
So, even if you're going to try and get back into it, even just setting that timer for 5 minutes, and at least, that 5 minutes is pretty much always doable,
Right. Well, I think people feel like, and I definitely felt like this when I first started, I think people feel like if they have a thought or something, if they get distracted, I think they feel like it's basically not impossible, but it's difficult to do because they can't stop themselves from getting distracted from whatever it is.
Totally.
And I know for me, it definitely helped, like doing it first thing in the morning before you have, all these distractions kind of come your way during the day. Doing it first thing in the morning definitely helped out when your mind was still somewhat clear, from, in other words, I guess maybe you could do it like later in the evening, but I just can't imagine if like doing it that late in the day, if you have all these things going on during the day. But before we get too far into that, do you want to introduce yourself and maybe kind of say a couple things about yourself? Just to kind of, preface everything we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ben Milston. I'm a mindset coach. For the last 10 years or so of my life, I've been on a massive self-transformation. I came from a life of, going through teens and young adulthood of depression and really like practically no self-confidence. I got into drugs and alcohol. I do anything really to get a smile, get a like from the people around me. I moved to Israel because I figured that maybe moving away from where I was brought up in Australia, moving away from that kind of environment would help me. And that didn't. Surprise, surprise, that you can move as many times as you want. You can change the people around you. But at the end of the day, you don't change yourself. Not much is going to change. And so like on this kind of downward spiral again, I realized, okay, if it's not the country, if it's not the people, then it's me. And that was kind of an aha moment of, all right, so then if I'm the one that needs to change, I can do that. It's just a matter of me. I don't need to wait for anything else in the world to change. I don't need to wait for anyone else to change. I don't need to rely on anyone or anything happening in the external. I can just work on myself. And that kind of really, took me on a crazy path of just breaking down my mental thoughts, my thought patterns, every time I would feel negative about something, if someone said something, if something happened, I would kind of take myself aside and be like, all right, this is me. This isn't them. why am I feeling bad about this? Why am I feeling angry? Why am I feeling sad or frustrated or whatever the feeling is? And that really helped me to unlock a lot of things in myself and kind of then take that to a point of, okay, so how do I want to feel? How do I want to think? And that's kind of led me to where I am now. I did a lot. I was about 6 or 7 years traveling the world. I was hitchhiking through Europe. I rode about 4,000 kilometers with a group in like horseback riding in Mongolia. I did 2 years of caravanning through South America. And so I took on these just masses of experiences of different cultures and different people, of how people lived. And, it's funny, growing up in Sydney, it was always just like, this is life. This is how we're meant to live. You just go to school, and then you go to university, and then you get a job, and that's what life is. And then just experiencing all of this other things, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, there's actually a lot more to life, and there's a lot of ways to be happy, and there's a lot of ways to experience, different people and experience ourselves other than what we're just taught. And so that was also really eye-opening. And right now I'm super happy to be a mindset coach. I help specifically holistic practitioners with their mindset, overcoming, their self-doubt and their negative self-talk, really helping them to get out of the comfort zone, because, the classic saying, the magic happens outside your comfort zone. And I feel that for me, that's the kind of biggest ripple effect that I can make, that at the end of the day, we can only help each other as much as we're able to help ourselves, as much as we're okay in our own skin, with our own mindset and whatever else. So the better we feel about ourselves, the more we love ourselves, the more confident we are in this amazing body that we're given, the better we're able to help those around me. So
yeah, that's great, man. I love the way you said that. You brought up a good point, which I wanted to touch on, which is that meeting people from different cultures and different areas of the world will really open your eyes to the way the world works. Because you're right. If you're in the same, like if you're in a country for like your entire life, and that's kind of all you see, that's kind of all you think that there is. But meeting people from different cultures and different countries, man, is really opens your eyes to how the world actually functions. How different things can actually be. And then you said something else too that I wanted to ask your opinion about. Anybody that I've ever, well, not every single person, but most people that I've known that have battled some sort of addiction, they have gotten through it with some sort of either mindfulness practices like meditation, or something physical like a fitness routine or something like that. And I'm curious, do you know why why do you think that is? I guess maybe the mindfulness is a big aspect of it. Does it just kind of make you aware of things, or what do you think about that? Just with the experiences you've had.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing with addiction, and it doesn't have to be substance abuse, it can be a negative behavior that we do, even just being on the phone, that's an addiction in itself. And all that is a type of a habit that we have that gives us, a quick dopamine kind of rush. And we like that. And so we get into this habit of doing it. I know when I was smoking cigarettes, it would be, I have my coffee, I have my cigarette. I'm waiting for the bus, I have my cigarette. I get in the car, I have my cigarette. There's constantly these things that would connect one another to when I would smoke. Or if I was feeling down, then I would, grab the bottle of whatever I was drinking. Or if I was just at home, I remember when I was much younger, I'd be at home, and there were these pills that I'd be taking because I got them from the people that would, said they were my friends, but I was also buying them pills, and so they obviously weren't my friends. Right. And that was just, it was like this euphoria, this high, this kind of, okay, this is what life's supposed to be, this high, and then you get this crashing down, and you don't actually do anything, and you're not going out, and you realize, surely this isn't what life is about, but you built yourself this kind of expectation of being in it. So what mindfulness can do, what exercise can do, what, there's so many different types of things that work for different people, is it kind of just breaks that habit. It puts them in a state, in a place where they can be getting those endorphins, the dopamine, from a different source. And often, a lot of people, when they try to start meditating, they try to start going to the gym, it's this kind of all or nothing feeling. It's okay, I'm going to start running 5 a.m. every morning. You're not going to. Like, that's not how building a habit works.
Right.
If I'm going to go at half an hour meditation without fail. No, you're not. Like, I don't know who you're kidding, but you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's not how habit building works. And so when it might start off well for the first 3 days, 4 days, week, whatever it is, but at some point it breaks, and then it gets back into that new routine, which is why for so many people it says, oh, I'm just going to have that one cigarette. And it's never that one cigarette. Once you have that one cigarette, for whatever reason it is, it's there's other reasons why you can have another one. And I'm not saying that there isn't a balance. There can't be a balance, especially when it comes to smoking or drinking. I think there can be, a balance with substances. I think there can be a balance with enjoying, different kind of things, just like parts of life. But for the same with everything, it's knowing that balance. And when you become aware of, okay, this is what I'm feeling and why I'm taking it, that's where the mindfulness practices come in, because you realize that it's not just, I have a craving, I'm going to fix that craving. It's, okay, I have a craving. I can sit with that craving. I can explore that craving. I know that craving will pass. This isn't going to be something that I'm going to crave literally from now until I have whatever it is that I'm craving for. And then that craving passes, and then you no longer want it. And then that craving might come up again, and you go and do something else. You go and eat an apple, or you go for a walk, or whatever it is that may help you with a specific craving. And slowly you become aware of those cravings. You could become aware of the times that you want to indulge in whatever addiction it is.
Yeah, I've heard that before too, man. I've heard that people say, if they're trying to break an addiction of whatever addiction, that they'll have these cravings, and they when they do that, they try to do something else, I guess to maybe get their mind off of it, or if it's trying to be, putting your attention somewhere else or trying to be productive. But I've heard that before, so that's interesting, how that works. But yeah, man, I don't know. This mindfulness thing, I think, is just something that seems so, like, I think to the average person, it just seems so far out of reach. Like, it seems so like esoteric, and like it's like so. I just feel like the average person, that we feel like we can't really do that. Like I said, if you meditate for 15, 20 minutes, that doesn't sound like a long time, but it's actually hard to do that, consistently. First of all, it's hard to meditate consistently. Like if it's hard to do it like every day or every other day or a couple times a week, but it's hard to do that continuously, like that continuous 15, 20 minutes, because if I were to try to meditate now, man, I would be doing very well if I could do a minute straight, like we just no thoughts interrupted. But then I've heard people say, like, no, that's okay. You should let those thoughts come. Just let them kind of pass through. Just don't pay attention to them, because I mean, it's not like you can stop yourself from thinking, thoughts or whatever.
And that's exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. That meditation isn't about no thoughts. We're not monks that do this day in and day out, where maybe they have that and still they have thoughts. That is not the point of meditation. What the point of meditation is not attaching ourselves to those thoughts, right? So I don't know if you're familiar with Vipassana meditation. It's a 10-day Vipassana meditation. It's a 10-day silent meditation retreat, of which I've done 3 of. And, everyone kind of says in that, wow, 10 days silence, that's crazy. And that's not what's difficult, because everyone's silent. What's difficult is sitting for 11 hours a day and meditating. But the idea, the practice is not, okay, we're going to not think. The idea is just not attaching ourselves to those thoughts. because when we attach ourselves to the thoughts that come in, that's where the real pain is, the struggles, people worry. Why? Because they attach themselves to things that haven't happened. People, lay on, go to things of the past and dwell on things of the past. And that's really problematic because it's already happened. It's, we're past that. So the idea is to just have the thoughts come there, notice the thoughts and not attach them to them. Let them come, let them go. And that's really the practice of meditation. That's in general the practice of mindfulness. Because when we can do that, when we're not in a meditative state, when we can do that throughout the day, then we less and less feel controlled by these thoughts that are just coming in constantly controlling our lives. One of the biggest practices that I do for myself that I would recommend for anyone who doesn't want to meditate, that feel like they can't meditate, whatever else the situation is to throughout the day just be constantly becoming aware of their breath. And this is something that can be done at any moment, at any time, whatever the situation is. And what that does is as soon as we become the breather, rather than the breath just happening to us, we bring ourselves back to the present. And when we bring ourselves back to the present, we can be more aware, we can be more mindful of how we're feeling in a situation, what's actually happening, what thoughts are going on in our head. Because a lot of times people aren't aware of the thoughts that they're having, which is crazy, but it's the majority of the time, the thoughts are just in there, but we're not even aware of thinking them.
Right.
And so bringing that attention back to our breath, checking in with ourselves throughout the day of just where we're at, what we're doing. And again, that's something that at the beginning stage, you might take a breath and then forget about it for the rest of the day. And that's fine. It's a practice that builds on consistency and whatnot. But the more consistent you get, the more practice you get, the more you remember to, okay, take a breath, just check in with where I'm going and what's happening. The more you start to notice what those thought patterns are. And that's really the beauty of mindfulness, is being aware of those thoughts and just having them come, having them go without attaching to them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. You mentioned something about being present. It's like staying present. I think one of the best things I've ever heard related to this is that everything is a present moment. Everything is if you think about a memory, that was just a past present moment. If you think about the future, you're imagining another present moment. And then there's obviously this moment right now, but it's like all that it really exists is the moment that currently is.
Totally.
And when I heard that the first time, it was really profound, because I was like, man, that makes a lot, because we spend so much time mentally in another place that's not right now. We think about last week, or we think about next week, or we think about 10 years ago, or 10 years from now. But it's like, but it's also like hard to not live in life without thinking about things that are not in the immediate present moment. But if you can do that, man, it really puts in perspective, like, just kind of what things are. It's like, this moment is all there really is. That's it. Like this exact moment is all there is. And it was profound when I heard that. But and it's something else too I wanted to ask you about. I read a book. I can't remember what this book was called. It was The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle.
That was my first self-help book. That was the book that got me out of it all.
It's an incredible book, but in there he talks about, like, if you can, let me see if I can verbalize it, because I can understand it, but let me see if I can phrase this in a way that this makes sense. He talks about seeing yourself as the thinker, or seeing yourself as the thing that is aware of the thoughts. And that's like, it blew my mind, because we think that we are the one that thinks. Like, we think the thoughts are ours, like whatever we think is us. But it's like, are we the person that thinks, or are we that awareness? Does that make, and you might have a better way to explain this than me, but that's just the way I understood it. It's like being aware of the fact that the thoughts you have are separate from like who you are as, you know, either a spirit or a soul or like that was like I had to read that several times and I was like, dude, this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, well, that was exactly the book that got me out of my kind of slump and really,
Mhm.
propelled me forward. And I'm so happy you brought that up, because that's exactly, I remember the time for me when I read that, and I recognized the fact that I think and I can hear my thoughts. There's something
Mhm.
else in there that not only thinks, but is also hearing the thought.
Hmm.
And that in itself is an added level of consciousness, right? Because who is it that is listening to the thoughts? Who is it that's thinking the thoughts? And so when we break that down, you have a thought, say you're talking in your head and you're
Mhm.
thinking as a thought, this is going really well. And you hear that and then talk back to that. There's multiple kind of levels of consciousness that are going on within the mind.
Right.
And so where mindfulness comes in, where being present comes in, is being aware of those different layers of consciousness, those different
Mhm.
voices happening, and then choosing how to respond with it. And then, the idea of free will comes with acting in the moment, with how we, as that, like that, our the person that we call us and whatever,
Mhm.
wants
Yep.
to act with all these other voices happening. So a lot of times what I'll tell my clients when they say I have these really negative thoughts, and I'll explain to them these negative thoughts are just a part of you, and they're trying to protect you. When someone says that, or that thought of I'm not good enough, well, there's that thought because it's just a part of you that's trying to protect you from doing whatever else it is you're doing in
Right.
case you fail. But it actually doesn't know the whole kind of scheme of things. It's just a small part of you, and it's you. And so I
Yep.
say, it's really important to hear that I'm not good enough kind of thought, acknowledge that, but also recognize that you don't need to buy into that. You don't need to listen to that. It's not something that you have to go and you know take full-heartedly. This part of me said this, so it must be true.
Mhm.
There can be another part of you that says, yes, I am good enough. Why not listen to that part?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think for me, the biggest realization was that those two things are separate. You know, that voice that maybe tells you that, and who you truly are, the you with like a capital Y, is like a
Mhm.
separate thing. You know,
Yeah.
and that was really like I was like, man, this is. It, I think it helped me maybe not be so hard on myself, because like you just said, like those thoughts are just trying to protect you. It's just there to protect your physical human body, basically.
Yeah.
Um, but man, I don't know if this is something that I'm like I can't explain this to the level that I understand it, because this is just such a deep thing. Like all I can say is just is for people to basically be aware of the fact that like the person that thinks and the person that is aware of those thoughts, or the thing or the soul or the spirit or whatever that's aware of those thoughts, are like different. It's a different, it's almost like it's a different being.
Yeah.
It's like there's the you that you are, that's your personality and everything, and then it's almost like there's the consciousness that embodies that, you know. And
Totally.
maybe people don't believe that kind of thing, but I don't know. For me, that was just like I said, I read his book several times, and every time I do, it's just like that part. Like I just sat there for like 10 minutes, man, just like in a in a state of like awe, because I was like, dude, this is a crazy. Like, how does a person come to know this kind of thing?
Totally. Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but anyways, yeah, it was a very profound thing. Uh
I think there's a
but yeah,
really beautiful, sorry, yeah,
you go ahead.
there's a really beautiful example with that of, if you ever notice when you're angry or angry with someone, and there's kind of something that you want to say, and then you have that like split moment within yourself of, do I say it or not? How is this? And sometimes, you're in that kind of anger, you're feeding into that. You're just, I hate this person. How can they say this? Whatever. Fuck you, whatever else it is. You go with it. And
Right.
sometimes there's that kind of like, wait, do I actually like want to say this? This is like, how is this going to be? This is just going to prolong this fight, whatever else, this thing. And there's that moment where you catch yourself, right? And you bite your tongue and you don't say it. That's the you with a capital Y. That is the moment where you capture the now, the present moment. You don't feed into the emotion and the thoughts and everything else that's just kind of overriding you. And there's a split moment of choice. There's a split moment of, I can actually choose to spit this out now, or I can choose to not. And that is the you with a capital U, rather than just action reaction. And they often say the difference is when you're in action response rather than action reaction, because action reaction is just something happens and there's a reaction to it. Whereas the you that has the capital U, that's something happens to you. You have a moment. You might take a breath. We get taught as kids sometimes, if you're angry, just take a deep breath, count to 10, whatever else it is, and then respond, rather than responding in that heated kind of fight or flight mode. And that's really a nice, I think, picture of the difference of when that big you, that kind of more conscious you comes into play.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I know we talked about this before, but the words that we choose to use has a lot of power. Whether that's to another person or to ourselves. I mean, what we choose to say and how we choose to speak, I think really, I think it really influences the lives our lives around us. Because I know you and I have talked before about I am, using I am, and what you say after that is extremely important.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you say something, if you're not feeling well and you say I am sick, like that has a very deep impact, I feel like, on your life.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, and what you think too, like the things you think, like I am XYZ. I think it has a huge impact. It can be a negative impact or a positive impact, depends on how you use it. But I don't know. I say that and I feel like people think I'm crazy sometimes, but I really believe that the what you say after I am, or what you say to another person, you are, or whatever, I think those things matter.
100%.
Because we're kind of putting it out there, in the universe, not just saying it to this person or just to ourselves, but like we're speaking that almost into existence.
Completely. And it's also just a matter of the words that we use create the belief systems that we have, and our actions then and our life around us forms based on those belief systems. So, things such as, I can never do that because I've never done it, right? Just the idea that because you've never done it, therefore means that you can never do it. If that's the thought pattern, then sure, you buy into that, then you will never be able to do it. But if the thought is, I've never done that, but I can improve myself and I can get more skills, I can learn, I can practice, and it puts you in a much better place of being able to tackle that and get over that obstacle. Even such things of, I can't lose everyone in my family is big, it's hereditary. Well, if that's the mindset that you're coming to it, well, then of course you're not going to lose weight, because you've just confirmed for yourself that everyone in your family is big and that nothing's going to work, and why even try? And that confirmation is everything. It's kind of like the placebo effect. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're probably right. And if you feel like you can't lose weight, well, then you can't, because you're not in that state of mind to do it. If you feel like, a good one is, I'm not a morning person. Of course you're not if you keep saying you're not a morning person, like no one, like, there are some people, I guess, that maybe are morning people, but everyone can be a morning person. Everyone can wake up and get out of bed and then become more energized depending on what they're doing and whatever. Hop in the shower, whatever else it is. This idea of, I'm just not a morning person, so I sleep until 10.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're confirming it for yourself.
The thing that gets me about that is, man, we take that very seriously with like children. We don't want, like, if we hear a child say something, this negative self-talk, we try to let them, give them a better way to phrase that. But then it's like when we become adults, it's almost like we feel like that doesn't have an impact. Maybe it doesn't have as big of an impact, but it still has an impact. A big thing, is like when people, if they're trying to learn a skill or something, or trying to do something, or say, well, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. I'm not smart enough to do that. Well, it's like, have you ever tried? I mean, you just don't know how to do it. You just haven't taught yourself how to do it,
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know, man, I think if we can have that mindset shift and just realize that the things that we say to ourselves and what we say about ourselves and how because that influences the world and the life that's around us. Whatever we say and think, it influences the life around us. If something happens to you, if you're in a place where you take that as a bad thing, that's going to have a very different impact on you versus if you say, well, this is trying to teach me this, or I can learn this from this, or this happened to me to push me in this direction to pursue something else. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways you can go about this, but if we don't have if we can't shift our mindset about that, I just feel like that has the power to direct our life. And I can't say that I'm particularly happy about that. Like I don't like I don't know. I wish that, well, I don't know. How could a person form that if they don't have that? Because this is like here we're getting into like a belief system, like these core beliefs that we have, like how we believe, or what we believe about ourselves and what we think we're worthy of and deserve and capable of. I mean, these are significant shifts that we're talking about.
100%. And these are things that we've been telling ourselves, or were told to us since we were a kid, and so we have continued telling ourselves probably our entire life. But what I think people really need to understand, and what can be the biggest shift for people, is that if we were told certain things as a child, and if those certain things we continue to tell ourselves, if we happen to have been told other things, then we would have been thinking differently. We would have acted differently. Right. Yep. So seeing as we don't have parents now, or teachers now, or elder siblings, or whoever else it is now to tell us the things that we want to hear, we have to take that responsibility on ourselves to tell us the things that we weren't told when we were younger. That is really important for us to hear now. When I was about 13 or so, I was within about a conversation of about half an hour, I was told with a specialist that I had dyslexia. And for the next 30 years, I confirmed it. I couldn't read because I had dyslexia. It was something that I was diagnosed with. I would try and read. I would try and, but I knew that it would be difficult for me. I would have to read a page and then read it again and read it again. I didn't know what I was reading, and I'd get frustrated with it. But it was okay because I had dyslexia. And then when I read the book Limitless by Jim Quick, it goes into the idea.
Oh, yeah, it's a good book. I've read that one. Yeah.
Amazing book. And it goes into the ideas of what certain limiting beliefs are that we might not even realize that we have on ourselves. And so I said to myself, I kind of challenged it. What if I didn't have dyslexia? And I think that's the first kind of spark for anyone who is thinking something negative about themselves. They can't do it. They're not that type of person. They're going to fail, whatever the situation is. Just to kind of think, well, what if I can? What if I don't have dyslexia? And from that, I began teaching myself to speed read. Now, I'm still on that path. I don't completely speed read like you see some professionals like whipping through the pages, but my speeding and comprehension has probably gone 4 or 5 times what it used to be in the space
Hmm.
of 12 months. And why is that? All because I said, okay, it's really time that I stop telling myself that I have dyslexia, confirming
Right.
that that is the problem. And I realized that maybe I just need more practice. Maybe I just need to focus a bit more when I'm doing that and not have so many distractions, whatever else the situation is. And it's not a
Yep.
matter of I can't do it because ... It's a matter of I can do it. I need more practice, or I need time, or I need whatever else the I need is. But it's changing that kind of mindset is the beginning of really unlocking so much potential that we all have, and we do. You
Hmm.
listen to any podcast on what our brains are capable of, what our bodies are capable of. I'm sure you know the idea of the 4 minute mile, and it's this idea that it was completely and utterly incapable for someone to run a mile in 4 minutes. It was physically, scientifically proven that it was impossible. And then someone broke
Right.
it. And as soon as someone broke it, more people break it. And now it's, people run a mile in a minute, no problem. Like you practice
Yep.
whatever else. But as soon as that kind of like idea of it's impossible came to it's possible,
Hmm.
it wasn't like your brains are going to burst out your body and this idea of it's scientifically impossible is a thing. No, it's just our minds and our bodies are so much more powerful than we give them credit for.
Yeah, 100%, man. You said so much that I want to talk about right there. So
So I
much that I
just
want to
don't want to
respond to.
yeah, I
No,
get
no,
passionate about these things.
no, that was great, man. First of all, we were talking about, you said, the beliefs that we have are a lot of times not even our beliefs. It's something that we heard as a child, that were given to us at some point in our life, through whatever, adults, teachers, whatever. But the guy that I was talking to, my last guest, Ross, he was talking about the same thing. And I think that's true. I think that's 100% true. I think a lot of the things that we believe about ourselves, like we have to ask ourselves, if we have a belief, whatever it is that something that we even believe about ourselves, or was that given to us by a person who was kind of projecting their own damage unconsciously? And I think the latter is true. I think that a lot of times, we as children, or young adults, or even adults, maybe we take in kind of we kind of form some of our opinions about ourselves through how people treat us, basically.
Yeah.
And you were talking about, kind of changing this mindset. Have you ever read the book? I think her name is Carol Dweck, about growth and fixed mindsets.
I haven't, but I'm
So
intrigued.
she's a psychologist, and she basically wrote this book about how people have either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. So basically, a
Yeah,
fixed mindset person says, I can do these things, I can't do these things, and that's just kind of how it is. And then a growth mindset person tries to maybe like tackle those things and say, well, I can't do these things yet, but I can teach myself to do these things. And I
100%.
bring that up because it's fascinating to me that someone told you had dyslexia, and you said, nah, fuck that. I'm going to learn how to speed read. Because I mean, like a lot of times, man, we like, especially if it's like a medical diagnosis, like we take that as something that is absolute, yeah, there's no way we can improve that. There's nothing we can do to change that. And you're because I know people who say they have dyslexia, and they like reading, they won't even attempt it. Like they just say reading is off the table for them,
Why would you when you're diagnosed with dyslexia? You can't do it. You're not going to even try.
Well, and that's kind of the thing. And I was talking to Ross too about this. We were talking about things like depression and anxiety. When a person says, I have depression, or I have anxiety, or I have dyslexia, that implies that they can't change that.
Yeah,
Like we say, just going back to what we were talking about, the words that we use, I have, or I am,
yeah,
or I am this way. That just implies that we can't do anything, to change that. But I think that it's fascinating that you're teaching yourself to do that, because like I said, I know a couple people who have dyslexia, and they basically won't even try to read or write out a long extensive thing or anything.
yeah.
And here you are, just kind of proving everything wrong. That's amazing, man.
Well, I think it really, when I realized that, and I think what you said is an amazing example of I have depression, I have anxiety. You're
Mm,
saying these things as though it's something that you have now.
mm,
And you will continue to have that as long as you say, I have depression, I have anxiety. 10 years down the line, if you're still saying, I have depression, you'll still have depression.
Yep.
If you change that to, I had depression, but I'm working on myself to get better, or I'm working on a better life, a happier life, a more fulfilling life. This idea that you can change, you're not stuck in, this is who I am, this is what I am, this is what I have, but I'm fluid and we're full of change. And this is something that was in my past, but it's no longer something that affects me. PTSD is another great example. What is happening with PTSD is that people relive the same traumatic event over and over and over again. And it takes, a lot of times a professional to be able to get them to really live that moment, put it aside as something that has happened, and move forward as something that is no longer an attribute that is part of them, no longer something that shapes them. It's something that may have shaped them, but it's no longer something that holds any power over them. In fact, they can hold power over it because of the immense kind of character that someone builds after going trauma. I feel so grateful and so blessed for the time that I had going through my depression and anxiety, and I was cutting myself and I was suicidal, and I wouldn't be here now having wanted to have gotten so far away from that if it wasn't for that. And so on the one hand, I could look back and always be the victim and think, I had this, I still have this, I'm whatever else, poor me. Or I can look at it as what a great gift to have been able to overcome something so powerful and come out the other side so much stronger. And I think, like, when you're talking about this fixed mindset or a growth mindset, it's that idea of there may have been things that have shaped you up until now, but every moment is a chance to grow. Every moment is a chance to change. It's just whether or not you're prepared to change. And a lot of times we get stuck in this kind of familiar comfort zone of addiction, the familiar comfort zone of depression, familiar comfort zone of I can't, because the alternative can be scary. The alternative of not recognizing our depressive state. What would it look like to be happy? I don't even know that type of person. It's unfamiliar. It's scary. A lot of people resist being successful and they self-sabotage because the idea, wow, like, what would that look like if I was actually successful? I think it'd probably be better. Like, I might fail, I might not. Probably better I don't go there just in case I fail, because I know my life now. I know where I'm at now, and I don't know that person, And I think it can be taken kind of like that, or it can be taken to this exciting idea of, we all have an idea, this dream of who we would like to be, our ideal self. Why are we afraid to be there? Why are we afraid to be that person? Why are we afraid to live our dreams? Why are we afraid to live outside of a life that is only mediocre?
Yeah.
Embracing it, it's we have this idea of an ideal self. How amazing would it be to be that person? To wake up and be like, holy shit, I am the person that I love being. This is great.
Well, but I think we can do that in both directions, though. I think we can do that in the positive direction or the negative direction, And I mean, Tony Robbins talks about this a lot, taking identity, like forming your identity and who you are. Because if a person says that they have depression, if that's just kind of who they think they are, I'm almost curious as to how much action, like what are the actions they do in the day-to-day things that are like self-affirming that, like what are they doing to themselves to basically prove that to themselves? it's just like somebody, like if somebody has a business or something, or if they're trying to, let's just say they have a business and they say, I have a business versus I am a business person. If you have a business, like you're not going to do things that some people that say I am a business person would do.
Yeah.
The person who sees themselves as a business person are going to do things that's required to make the business operate versus a person who just has a business, because they're saying, I have a business. I'm a person who has a business. And the other person is saying, I am a business person. The two people are going to see those things and operate completely differently.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's the importance of like having this identity. Like, no, like you can't, if you have a mindset or a what seems like a condition and you make your identity out of that, it's almost like your actions are going to be, they're going to follow that. I mean, I don't know how else bringing up Tony Robbins again. He also says, like when a smoker says, I'm not a smoker, or I forgot how he phrased it, I'm trying to quit smoking, but he's basically talking about the identity that you take in this.
Yeah.
And I think that we can do that, like what you're talking about. Well, why can't we be this person that we can kind of see ourselves as in the future, like the best version of ourselves? Well, I think people do that, but a lot of times they either do it the best possible way or they do it the most negative possible way.
100%.
Because I think a lot of these things that we do, man, they just kind of reinforce these beliefs. I think that, once we have these beliefs, whether it's a core belief or we've been told we have some sort of condition, depression or whatever, it's almost like sometimes we just kind of reaffirm and like prove those things to ourselves,
Yeah.
Like and it's so simple, because we think about like children. If you tell a child that they're a bad child, well, they're going to take that as a belief, and they're going to probably operate in a way that a bad child, if such a thing exists, would operate,
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And Tony Robbins, speaks a lot. He's very big in the story we tell ourselves,
Mhm.
and it's that idea, like with the smoking. If you say, I'm currently quitting, or I'm trying to quit, it means you haven't. That means you're still
Right.
a smoker.
Exactly. Yep.
If like I remember when I first started my coaching career, that it was from day one, I was a successful coach. Because there was no amount of time that I would say to myself of, in a year's time, I hope to be successful. Or once I've had 20 clients that maybe I'll be successful, then I hope to be successful. No, it's from day one, I needed to put that kind of, that mentality in, that this is who I am now.
Yep.
And then you grow into that person. You grow into being the person that you say that you are. If you are told, like with a kid, if you are told that you're a bad child, what they mean is maybe the action that they did wasn't good, or maybe the actions that they did wasn't the right actions. But by saying that the child is a bad child, like you said, they grow up and they affirm it. I'm a bad child. And they go steal and get caught, and they go, well, obviously I'm a bad child. And then they go, get in there in trouble and go to jail. Well, what do you expect of me? I'm a bad person.
Right.
This is just what I am. This is who I am. I've always been a bad person. Obviously, I'm going to go to jail. And so, this kind of reconfirms it. And when they go there, they're like, ha, I knew it. I am a bad person.
Yeah.
And it's the difference between the people that will say, go to jail, recognize their action was wrong, and that they can fix their actions because they don't deserve to be in jail because they are not a bad person. They just might have done something stupid at the time.
Right.
Those are the people that change their lives. Those are the people that wake up and say, all right, here's a new day. Who am I today? Not who was I yesterday. And that I can't remember who says this, but he kind of talks about a lot of people living life in the rearview mirror, that we constantly look back to what we did yesterday and who we were yesterday to confirm who we are today. And that in itself, will bring us onto tomorrow. And so we kind of just live this life of the past. We're constantly living the person that we were yesterday, last week, last month, last year, and nothing's changing. Nothing's getting better. and we're just kind of struggling on. But at any time that we say, okay, that's who I was yesterday, last minute, whatever it is, but that's not who I am now, and that's not who I choose to be tomorrow, that's where, some of the real magic comes on. And then it's just a matter of practicing that. It might not be something that is believed at first. It might take time, because like when we're children, we were told things over and over and over again. We didn't think that we were a bad kid the first time that we were told, bad boy. But after hearing it for 15 years on different things constantly, it confirmed it, it affirmed it. And so it's not a matter of us telling ourselves, I'm such and such person. I still have to say to myself, I don't have dyslexia. I can read. I'm improving my reading. I'm working on myself. And it's still something that I continuously have to tell myself and reaffirm with myself, the same way that I had been reaffirming my dyslexia for 30 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's great, man. That's awesome. I wanted to make a comment about something and I forgot what you said. What did you say when you started that? Because I was listening to you talk and I kind of forgot about it. But when we first, it was a very profound. It was pretty profound because I hadn't thought about it like that before, and I can't remember exactly what you said. Do you know how you started? Like what you said maybe at the beginning of that? I really wanted to respond to it, but I can't remember. I can't remember. Maybe
We were talking about the kid, like being a bad boy or whatever, those types of. No.
I don't know, man. I was paying attention to what you were saying, and I like it slipped my mind. I'm going to have to start writing some notes down or something, because I did that last time I was talking to somebody. Just had something I wanted to say, and it completely slipped my mind.
Listen, if it comes back, it comes back. If not, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah. But look, Ben, let's take a break for a second, and and I'll start the video back up. I think the uploading looks like it's pretty good. Let me stop this recording just for a second. So we got it figured out. So you said that you grow into the person. How did you say it? You grow into the person that you want to be?
Yeah, that when you start telling yourself who you are now, then that becomes the person that you grow into. If you start saying, I'm not a smoker, and you say that enough, that becomes part of your identity. So the idea of you having a cigarette isn't something that you do because you're not a smoker.
Right.
When I started my coaching course, and I would say, my coaching career, and I would say, I'm a successful coach, that allowed me to grow into that. If it was something that I just said, in a year's time, I'm going to be successful, well, maybe I'd get there, maybe not, but what's happening with that year up until then? I'm in the wrong mindset to be doing that. A lot of people have this with also their finances. I could never make enough or whatever. I was like, well, if you tell yourself you can't, then you got no hope. But if you say that this is something you're going to work for, and you put yourself in I'm going to be making more money this year than last year. I'm making more money this year than last year, this month than last month, whatever else the situation is. I'm living in this abundance, abundant world, in a life of abundancy. Then that becomes the life that you begin to live, because you begin to believe it. That goes into your subconscious, and then you reenact the person that you are.
Yeah. That's I'm so glad you remembered that. So you hear people talk about this though when they say fake it till you make it. You have to, if you just try to live the life that you, or if you try to be the person that you want to be, it's like the life that you want to live is almost inevitable. This is what I love about fitness, man, because it's like with fitness, there's no end goal. Like there's no finish line with fitness. That's an ongoing, continuous thing. Like if you want to be fit, you have to basically do things to stay fit and be fit.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the things that I love about it, man, because you have to be like, make those decisions in that moment to be that person. A fit person, they're going to limit or limit certain parts of their diet. They're going to watch what they eat. They're going to watch what they do and how they live life. And it's just like a continuous thing. And I mean, that's how I can, how I relate to what you're saying right now, how I can kind of tie it into where I'm at, because you do have to be the person that you want to be, or the life that you want to have. You basically have to take the actions that person would take,
Yeah.
If you're a person who wants to do well financially, you have to do things that a person who's doing well financially would do.
Yeah.
And if you do those things, eventually you do it enough, you do it long enough, and you're there,
Yeah.
Of course that's easier said than done, because we get distracted along the way, and it's like, it's hard to kind of stay on that route. But yeah, man, that's really, that I think that's really important, for us to try to grow into that person.
Yeah.
And to try to become that person, long before we feel like we're there, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to what we were saying earlier, affirming your actions, like affirming the beliefs that you have.
And I think that, like you said, it's harder to do that than it's giving credit. It's very easy to just say, I'm gonna get up every other morning and go for a run, and it's a lot harder to actually do that. But when we have an idea of the why, I don't know if you read the book, start with why. Great motivational book, and it talks about why we do things. Is the motivational kind of drive, but behind everything that we're doing, whether it's good or bad. And a lot of people will say that they'll kind of use the thing that they're not wanting for a drive rather than the thing that they're going to get from it. And it's a lot, so if someone says, I want to be fit because I want to lose weight because I'm too fat, or because I can't breathe, or whatever else it is, it's a lot harder to keep that motivation than having something that you're looking forward to and that you're getting out of it. The idea of getting into the size down clothes, and that idea of being able to go and try clothes on that you've never been able to fit into before, or the idea of having this kind of energy that you haven't had before, and really touching into why you're doing it and what you'll get from it rather than what you're giving up. And another great example when it comes to smoking is the idea of, a lot of people think about, wow, it's going to be really hard to not smoke because I'm giving up smoking. Well, when your mindset is something you're giving up, it's a lot harder than the idea of, well, I might be getting 20 years of my life back. I'll be able to breathe properly again. I won't have these like crazy coughing fits at 25 years old. I won't be smelling around everyone. And these are all the things that you'll be getting from it, rather than I have to give up smoking.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. I'm trying to think where I want to go from here, because you're making so much sense. I don't want to say something that's going to that's going to take away from that. That is a good point. Like what you're giving up versus but I mean, so I don't know if you've heard of Friedrich Nietzsche. I think he was the philosopher or something. I don't know who he was, but he said, if you can remember the why, you can bear the how. So if you remember why you're doing something, it can make it a lot, I won't say easier, but for lack of a better word, it can make it easier to get on that path if you remember why you're doing the thing.
Yeah.
And I think too, the why, like the reason that you do something can be, well, if it's not a big enough reason, you're just simply not going to do it. Especially if it's something that's hard, like breaking an addiction or losing weight or whatever. If the why is not big enough, if it's not important enough to you, it's going to make it really easy to give up.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, if whatever we're doing, especially if it's going to be something new, something difficult, we have to know why we're doing it. I mean, that sounds like very elementary and very like obvious, but I don't think a lot of times we think about those things before we try to venture onto something. I think we just think in the moment we want to do it. And well, first of all, when we say we want to do something, a lot of times we don't even get started. Like we'll just say, like so many people say they want to do something, and then we have these ideas and then we never just kind of act on it. But if we do, man, if you can remember the reason that you wanted to do something, if you can remember why you're doing a thing, I think that'll make it easier to get to where you want to get to.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many reasons to sometimes to not, like it just makes sense sometimes. Like if you're trying to, I'm speaking kind of like, I'm thinking specifically about if you try to start a business or something. I mean, there's significant risk that goes into that. I mean, you could do all this work and it not work out. You could lose money or whatever. But if you remember whatever the reason is that you started that, and it really shouldn't be to make money, because I think that should be a secondary thing for a business. I think that if a business focuses solely on making money, they're probably not going to make very much of it.
Or they're going to make it and hate it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
somewhere along your life, you're either going to have money and hate that your life, or you're not going to like it and it's not going to work. One of those two things, and neither of them are healthy or positive.
No, yeah, that's right. So that makes me think of something else. Have you read Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl?
I haven't.
So this person was, I think, he was a psychologist, and he survived the Holocaust, basically. And so basically, he says if you're in a situation of suffering, if you're in something that's painful, if you can assign a meaning to that, if you can find the meaning of why you're there, he said that helps kind of get you through that basically. And I think that's a pretty good point, man. Because if we experience something traumatic or painful, and if it has a meaning, I feel like that helps us kind of get through that. Whatever that meaning is, I guess that would have to be for the person to decide. But I do think it makes it easier to kind of persevere through that.
Yeah.
I don't know, just with your life experiences is kind of where you're at now. I would just want to get your thoughts on that to see if you kind of agree with that or.
I think for a period of my life, I did believe that everything happens for a reason, and that kind of gave comfort to the bad things, the troublesome things, the challenging things that happened. And I think now the kind of way that I'm looking at it is I can give reason to everything that's happened. And that puts a lot more kind of power back into my life, that I can, rather than just kind of putting it out there and, I'm sure there's a reason that happened.
Yep.
I can give that reason. I can say I went through hell for, 8 years or however long it was, so that I could be here now, so that I can be doing so much with my life, so that I can feel this kind of passion to life.
Mm-hmm.
And that, whether or not that was the reason, that wasn't the reason, that's the reason I gave to it. And that, gives it strength, that gives it power. So I think we can all kind of take any experience. And I think life is just a matter of experiences and learning more and more about life itself and ourselves in the time period that we have. Whether or not there's an afterlife, I can't tell you, but in the period that we have on Earth, I can't see more meaning necessarily for my life other than wanting to understand myself as much as possible. Because when I understand myself as much as I can, everything has meaning. Every experience that comes my way has meaning. The reason why I'm here, the reason that something bad happened, it was because I could then go and help that person. So that person had to, this kind of idea of the butterfly effect or the ripple effect, that we're all connected. And by us all being connected, some people are going to go through certain challenges. Some people are going to go through other challenges. But it's the meaning that we give to those challenges. It's the meaning that we give to life itself that makes life worth living and makes it beautiful, rather than just like 9 to 5 that we don't like and then we die. Well, what's the point? Why are we doing the 9 to 5? Just cut the chase. Like, let's give ourselves some meaning. Let's give ourselves some purpose for being here. And yeah,
I was just going to say, I think though, for a lot of people, I think finding that purpose or finding that meaning is like, I think it's difficult sometimes, because we're like, I mean, that's a very big question. What is my purpose here in life? What is the meaning of my life? I mean, that is I don't know if there's a bigger question in life than that.
It's interesting because it's on the one hand, it's the biggest question that there is in life. And
Yep.
on the other hand, our purpose is literally just to do us, just you to be you. That is your purpose.
Yeah.
Me to be me. That is my purpose. So on the one hand, it's kind of funny, this like massive question, well, what is expected of me? And on the other hand, the answer is literally just you're expected to just go and do you and be you and try and be the best you that you can and understand like what you like, what you don't like, how you can love yourself as much as possible. And through that, you'll find whatever it is that is right for you through, that self kind of awareness, that self understanding, that self kind of like delving in on, well, who am I? Not what is my action reaction, my subconscious just kind of on autopilot, but like who is behind that? Who is that kind of like spirit that is me, that laughs because I want to laugh, not because everyone else is laughing and I want to be a part of it, that
Right.
kind of thing. Like when we step into those shoes, that part of ourselves that is just really that flow, that that sense of just being, well, then the idea of what our purpose is kind of is arbitrary, because the purpose is just to be. And what comes out of that is whatever will come out of that.
Wait a minute. Time out. Time out. Say that again.
The purpose.
So you said, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
The purpose of life, or everyone's life, is just to be you. And when you are you, without all the distractions of other aspects of your ego, without the distractions of your subconscious and the questions of, well, what will they think, or are they going to judge me, or and just really stepping into your shoes and being you, well, then whatever comes of that, that's the purpose. That's what will happen. That's where life is. That's, you'll have your hobbies and you'll have your drive and you'll have the things you're motivated for. That's the purpose, to just be.
Yeah, I like that. That's incredible. Very, very well put, man. Yeah, because I think that's true though, because I don't think we have passions and desires. Like, we don't have these things by accident, and there's a reason that we have our passions are different from other people's passions. I don't think these things, they're not accidental that we have these things. I think the problem is though that, like, the passion that you have, whatever that is, or the desire you have, or the goal that you want to attain in life, I think where it ends up is proportional to the effort that it's going to be to get there. So like, let's say if somebody has a passion for art, if they're a really talented artist, I mean, it will be very difficult to make a decent living at that, but it is possible. Like, you would have to you had to be very successful to make a living to that. But it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, what do you think you're capable of? And I don't think making a living that's not the purpose of life. I'm just saying, if you're going to pursue a passion for that purpose, then it kind of has to work out. But yeah, we're not attracted to these things, and we don't have these passions. They're not accidents, I guess, is the point of that, what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well, if someone can really go out there and with the confidence of, this is what I want to be doing, and like there's always a way to make something work. We've heard all the stories out there of the people that have come from nothing and built themselves on whatever else it is. And so so many refugee stories are coming to mind, of people having to leave everything with just the clothes on their back. Like, I feel like anyone listening to this podcast will have had more than that,
Mm-hmm.
And if someone who is leaving a war or wherever they're leaving, with literally the clothes on their back and maybe no education and whatever, and can make it work because their drive, their passion, they're just, giving them their themselves, their life, then I really believe that there isn't a type of hobby, or there isn't a type of passion, or there isn't a type of thing that fulfills us that can't also sustain us. And the people that might not be making it in a field of, say, art, is because they're also trapped by ideas of what do I need to do to make this happen? Maybe my art's not good enough. I really enjoy it, but I don't know if I should put myself out there. It's too expensive. It's too hard. It's too whatever. And then you find someone else who wants to make it happen, and they will make it happen. However, they will door to door knock. They will go to the galleries. They will, annoy someone until they put their artwork up. They'll do whatever it takes to get it up there. And I feel the difference between someone really living their passion, really living their sense of drive, that life force within, to someone who likes doing something but still has other aspects of their life that they're feeling more contained about, or they're not completely 100% in their own shoes, that this is what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to go back to I want to kind of backtrack here for a second, because if we keep going down this road, man, we'll talk forever about this. And I want there's other things I want to hit. So let's go back for a second. So you mentioned something about the ego. Yeah. And I like when we hear ego, we like a lot of times we think about like if a person has an ego, we think that they're arrogant or whatever. But like I know in the mindfulness aspect of it, the ego is something different. So I kind of want to explain what I think the ego is, and maybe you can tell me if I'm like in the ballpark. But the ego is basically the person that you think you are, like the person that gets offended and reacts to things, the person that gets upset about certain things. But so how does that differ from like the ego and like who you are? Because the ego, it's been a while since I've talked about this, man. So I don't know if I'm understanding this the right way.
Yeah, you're on the right track.
Okay. So like I guess maybe what would be the ego, and how do we I mean, is that right? It's basically the part of us that reacts to things.
Yeah. So if you kind of imagine the ego as the part of you that has experienced everything up until now and has this idea of who you are, right? Mm-hmm. So given all your memories, given everything that you've gone through, given your experiences, it has kind of created, your ego has created this idea of your identity. This is me. Right. For the idea that I couldn't read, I was told I had dyslexia. I have dyslexia. I can't read. That's a part of my ego, explaining these things. It's part of my identity. Mm-hmm. The person that says, I'm just big boned. That's just who I am. It's part of the identification, the part that calls themselves me. This is who I am, Ben Milston. This is me. So all those things, all those attributes, all those memories and whatever is what we can classify as the ego.
Okay.
And then the part that is, I guess, kind of outside of the ego, when they say kind of dissolving the ego, is the idea that we can have all these ideas of who we are and all these ideas of who this I is, who this person that we identify is. Mm-hmm. But then we can also unidentify with them. So I could have identified my whole life as being dyslexic. I can also unidentify with that, or there can be a part that just isn't that. And that's kind of like the idea of dissolving the ego. It's dissolving a part of myself that has created an identity around who I am or what I am.
Yep.
And there is another aspect of within my mind that is kind of with outside of that realm, outside of the idea of this is everything that encapsulates me.
Right.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I got you. So the thing that comes to my mind, and what probably comes to most people's mind when they hear that, is like, if they dissolve basically who they think they are, then who are they?
Sure.
Like, and so I guess that's the question, because one thing I remember from meditating, man, and it's been a while, but is you get this sense of self, like of your true self, like of who you. I don't know how to explain this
Yeah.
other than to say you just feel yourself as a spirit, as like a being, basically. And like, it's like all these external things in life, they don't really carry the weight. I feel like maybe is that the way to say it? I don't want to say they're not important, but it's like who you think you are. Okay, here we go. Who you think you are and the person that does the thinking are different. Like I was saying earlier. Like I mean, so the ego is, you're basically saying the ego is like all the experiences you've had up to this point, like this I guess this character that we're playing in this life, this ego.
It's kind of, even you could look at it like the ego is an aspect of the mind that exists as a defense mechanism for ourselves, for our life, right? So we have a sense of identity as a defense mechanism for how we go through our day-to-day life. But that's what it is. It's a defense mechanism trying to look after this body and this spirit. The same reason that we have memories and we think we understand the memories, the idea why we have a memory is so that we know if something bad happened, we can make sure, try to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future.
Right.
So it's a defense mechanism. So it's that kind of thing. But we also know that our memory is very flawed. Why do we have a flawed memory if it's something that's supposed to protect us? And the idea of that, the same with an ego, is because each part of our brain works also very much in unison with one another, but it's also very much disconnected from one another. So there's certain things that will kind of work well, like when we have a memory of, if we remember a fight with someone, then our ego plays into remembering that fight, and we remember why they did everything so bad, and it builds on those kind of emotions. And so we learn that next time we see him, we're going to stay clear of him because we have this memory and we have this emotion that's connected to it. But beyond that, and so that's kind of the defense mechanism. But then beyond that, like you said, the true self is this kind of it's almost like a non-emotional kind of self that is living in what could be said the frequency of love or joy, which is beyond the frequencies of anger or frustration or things that can come up from a memory. And it's this just kind of feeling of peace with the flow of life. And I think that is when we get into the ideas of the true self. And if we want to go even further into this idea of true self, what are we all? Where we're going into quantum a bit, is that we're all vibration that is just vibrating on different frequencies throughout the universe. And that in actuality is what's happening. We just perceive those vibrations in a very specific manner based on the five senses that we have. But when we talk about the true self, we get back to this idea of, say, a one kind of consciousness, or a higher level consciousness that is a very specific type of vibration that we can connect to. And when we connect to that vibration, what I would be connecting to is the same kind of vibration that you would be able to connect to, because we have those both those types of vibrations within us. Everyone has these kind of universal vibrations within us all. It's just a matter of being able to connect to that. And when we connect to those universal vibrations, that one type of frequency of, you call it love, you call it God, you call it, whatever you call it, this type of frequency is that kind of ecstatic feeling that sometimes during meditation we can feel when we reach for a split moment, that kind of no thoughts, no history, no past, no memories, no attachments, no identity, feeling of I need this or I need that, or I want this or I want that. Those are ideas of the ego just trying to protect us in this life. And when that part is kind of pushed to the side, what is left is just this universal frequency, this vibration of just kind of oneness with everything, because it's that same oneness that we tap into with one another.
So so that so like when we think about this way, it makes it easier for me to think, like, if a person says something or does something to me, if they're just kind of reacting out of their ego, it makes it a lot easier to not take it so personally, because people, like, we're all so caught up in our heads all the time, man, and we just like we say things and do things, and it's like this person is just basically reacting out of a spot of fear, or whatever it is. And it makes
us to be compassionate to them.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying to put yourself in danger or allow yourself to stay in a situation that's dangerous, but it just helps you understand kind of like where people are coming from. And compassion is a good way to say it too, man, because you're like, well, some people just, I can't imagine like reacting to things that some people react to. Like some people, I mean, it's just like the smallest thing, and I'm like, man, it would take so little, I think, soul searching to just kind of look into yourself and say, look, is this as big of a deal as I'm making it? Which is, I mean, it's hard to do that in the moment, but that makes a lot of, like, now that I'm kind of putting all these pieces together, it makes a lot of sense.
And that's actually beautiful that you mentioned that, because that kind of also takes us back to the power of our words. And one thing that I will often say to myself is this idea of, like, it's all good. That in the grand scheme of things, if we're to zoom out on my life and to zoom out on the world and whatever else, like, everything is actually okay. Like, whatever it is in this moment that I'm upset about, I see some people, like, they get cut in traffic, and road rage is such a big thing. And I'm thinking, it's just like, is that worth it? Is everything going that wrong that if someone cuts in front of you or doesn't indicate or whatever, that you're just going to fume about it for the remainder of the hour journey home that you have? It's crazy when we think of it, and so going back to the idea of the power of our words, this practice that I say of, like, it's all good, really everything is okay. Okay, you cut me. He's probably having a worse day than I am, or he's yelling at me. Like, I feel sorry that he must be in a really shitty place at the moment, that he feels like he needs to yell, or that if someone's angry, that sucks. I don't need to take that on. And it's not something I don't want his energy. I'm happy where I'm at. I am.
But the problem is, like, a lot of times we do take it personally, and that's just a snowball effect. It's just like a feedback loop. Somebody reacts out of a place of their ego, and they say something to us, and then we react out of our ego, and then it's like just, it's a feed, and then we're in a cycle. So going back, you said something that I want to touch on, which is oneness, and I'm curious about this, like what you think about this. So consciousness. So, like, people talk about consciousness, like, there's a theory that like, everybody who we are is basically consciousness experiencing itself as one, as an individual. Who was it? One of the philosophers said, "You're not of a speck of ocean, a drop of the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a single drop." And that is this gets to the point, man, where it's like it's almost hard for me to comprehend these kind of conversations, because it's like such an abstract, like it's just so crazy to think about the fact that like this could be the way it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we could all be connected to this one super consciousness, basically, and like we're individual representations of that.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. For me, it's hard to wrap my head around that.
Listen, for me, it's hard to wrap my head around it, and I think it's difficult for anyone, no matter how long you've been going into this, to try and perceive something of such magnitude. You know, when we talk about this oneness, this God, the universal energy, whatever you want to call it, the idea of trying to comprehend that in the limited capacity of a human mind is very difficult. But when we try to break it down into a more physical manifestation of what it all is, so we break down that we're all made up of atoms, and when you break down the atoms, the atoms are just energy, and what energy is just vibration, right? Different vibration for different amounts of energy. It vibrates more and more quickly. It's going to have heat and whatever else coming off it. If there's specific types of vibration, it's going to be light, and we're either going to see it with our eyes or we're going to feel it, whether it's UV rays with the sun and whatever else. There's X-rays and gamma rays. These are all different types of energy. And so when we break it down as all physical manifestations of what we experience reality to be, is energy, is just how we perceive energy based on how we're able to perceive energy, then we can begin to comprehend the idea that there are specific energies that are going to be universal. There are specific energies that are going to be maybe harmful to us specifically. There are specific energies that are going to be more beneficial. There are different types of energies, and the idea of this like one consciousness is that there is a specific type of energy, a specific type of vibration that runs throughout the entire universe. And that is a specific vibration that connects all of us, all living, non-living things, everything throughout the universe. It's this idea that as an energy, it is that same energy. So within us all holds that same energy. If we are to, look at the makeup of our body, and we look up the makeup of our heart, right? And in the center of our heart, we have a small amount of iron.
Right.
And iron is something that is formed, at the center of supermassive stars. So, and that's the only place that iron can be formed, in the center of a star. And so this idea that a star at some point has blown up billions of years ago, has ripped across the universe, has come to Earth, created our Earth, has and is like the foundation in the center of our heart. Like that kind of interconnectedness just blows my mind. That is really this idea of not even on an energetic level are we all connected, but on a physical level we're connected.
Yeah.
The idea that we're breathing in the same things that we're breathing out, that like what we're in the same room and we're breathing in and breathing out, and we're a part of this one kind of connectedness on more than just an energetic level, but on this like physical level as well. And I think when we try and conceptualize it like that, of how we can see the actual makeup of ourselves, even just the fact that our bodies are made up of the compost of trees and bones and this, and the calcium from certain parts of either milk or from there's so many different elements that make up our body that is part of this earth and part of this universe that we all share as well. And that is how I kind of, that's my take on this kind of oneness, is that also energetically there is a oneness that's going through us all, but there's also, physically also, like, there's this oneness that we all share aspects of one another. It's kind of, it's even like when we, when you meet someone for the first time and you just kind of click with them, it's just straight off the bat, you just like, that they're just like a brother from another mother. That kind of like feeling is you're connecting with their person, their inner person, that oneness that is a part of you. You don't know anything about them. You don't know who their identity is. You don't know who their ego is. That you don't know their history, their thoughts, their anything. And yet there is such a connectedness. What are we connecting to? A part within them that's in ourselves.
Yeah. That's crazy. I've never thought about that energetically. I've never thought about the oneness of consciousness energetically, but that does make sense. You said something that really like blew my mind. Have you ever seen the picture of like the universe compared to the picture of like the human eye?
Yeah.
And it's like the similarities, man, are like so like it's crazy. And this is we could go down a whole nother rabbit hole with this, but what I'm hearing with this, man, is that, or one thing that came to my mind is that the things that we see in life, like what we experience, is a chemical reaction in our brain. And that's another rabbit hole too. But I'm just saying, it's man, this has been a very thought provoking conversation. Like this has been a very profound conversation. I've been thinking for like, I feel like 90 minutes. Like my brain is just fried. Like I've just been thinking this whole time.
I know that feeling, but it's a good feeling, because then you realize, like, holy crap, there's so much more out there that like needs exploring, that needs, understanding, and there's so much more out there. But there's also like, I can figure out what's out there by looking inside.
Right.
You can, by figuring out more of what's going on inside, is you also get a feeling of what's going on the outside, which is really cool.
Yeah, for sure, man. Ben, I'm gonna have to wrap up shortly. I want to make sure that you have time for this. Do you have a social media or a website or anything that you want to direct people to?
Yeah, I'd love for you guys to follow me. Add me as a friend on Facebook, Ben Milston. You'll see a picture of me if you're watching this. But yeah, come add me. Also, www.benmilston.com. You can come see my website. If you got any questions about anything, more than happy to talk to each and every one of you. I'm really, I feel really privileged and blessed to be here speaking with you and speaking about things that you can hear I'm super passionate about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, so your coaching, is there like, when you say mindset coaching, what's like a focus? What do you think you focus the most on with that? Like, is it just, I mean, because mindset really could be anything. Is this just like, is there a certain area that you focus on the most, or you just kind of just mindset in general?
So yeah, what I like to focus on is helping people to become more aware of their self-talk.
Okay.
And when people are more aware of their self-talk, and specifically their negative self-talk, then we work on a process of self-compassion towards their self-talk, like we spoke about before, that these are just parts of you, and that these are parts of you that should be loved, not ignored, and should be listened to, not shut down. And through that process, then we can work on how do we go from being aware of this negative self-talk to coming to a positive place, and really beginning to recreate the story that we tell ourselves. Because at the end of the day, we were told a story at whatever point in our life. We were told a story, or we told ourselves a story, and we kept telling ourselves that story over and over again every day, consciously, subconsciously. And then it comes to a point where we realize enough's enough. It's time that I consciously and actively rewrote my story. And and we can, we can tell ourselves whatever we want to tell ourselves. We can write whatever story we want to write for ourselves. And then it's just about writing the story that is important for us to hear, because we're the ones, hearing that in a monologue. We're the ones telling ourselves the story of what is right, what isn't right, what is good for us, bad for us. These are, these different ideas of who we are. If I can share with any, as many people as possible, this idea that you can rewrite your story. You are not set in stone. You are not who you were yesterday. If you don't want to be, then my job's done.
Very well said, man. I can't wait to go back and re-listen to this. Like I feel like I'm gonna get so much knowledge out of this. So just a couple more quick questions, man. If somebody, what advice would you give to somebody who just maybe wanted to start meditating, who was maybe kind of intimidated about it? Like, just what do you think a good beginner process is for somebody who's never meditated, who wants to maybe try it out?
Yeah. So the two biggest things that I would say for people wanting to start out is start with 5 minutes, because 5 minutes is doable. It's not overwhelming. It is something that doesn't sound like a lot as well. And when a habit is formed, then you can build on it. You can always build up from 5 minutes, but the trick is just doing the 5 minutes. When you do when you sit down and you start, you do your 5 minutes, or you sit down, you're about to do your 5 minutes, just smile to yourself, just appreciate the fact that you're doing this, because how we also build habit is through this kind of positive emotion, positive feeling towards what we're doing. So we want to try and build that emotion attachment to what we're doing. We don't want to sit down with, I have to go and do this meditation now or whatever, because you're going to then associate this negativity or having to do it with meditation. Right. You want to associate a positive emotion with the fact that you're doing something positive for yourself, that you're going to get something out of it, that this is, even if you're not going to feel it after 5 minutes, your subconscious is going to feel it, your inner body is going to feel it, there's going to be a part of you that's going to feel it. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not now, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's the next day, maybe it's next week. But the idea that you're doing something for yourself, that you're bettering yourself, touch into that emotion. And when you sit down, don't worry if you're thinking, follow your breath, try and just breathe in through your nose, become aware of that, breathe out through your nose, become aware of that, and really just keep coming back to that breath, because that breathing is something that we do, presently. That's something that happens all the time. We can't stop that. And when you forget that you're breathing, and that becomes automatic, and that will happen, and don't worry, because it will happen often. That is perfectly fine. Just come back to it. Don't get upset with the fact that you forgot. Don't get upset with the fact that you have thought about X, Y, or Z. Doesn't matter how long you thought about X, Y, or Z for. That's fine. Just come back to the breath. And again, when you come back to that breath and you remember to become aware of your breath, feel good about it. Attach that association with, another time that you've come back to the present moment, another time that you're bettering yourself. So it's these associations, these positive associations with coming back to the breath that will build a positive and strong meditation practice, rather than getting upset every time you forget to do it or every time you have a thought, because that's just going to upset you and annoy you, and you're going to break it.
Yeah, that's 100% true, because that's how I feel, or how I felt if I would have it. Like I thought I wasn't supposed to think anything. I thought I was just supposed to kind of sit here and do this thing. So it helps me to hear, don't be discouraged, basically, if you think that.
Yeah. And then you will be thinking it will happen.
Go ahead. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, how do you not think? How can you stop yourself from thinking?
The idea is just not giving too much emotion to it, not giving too much space to it. Okay, you're thinking. I'm thinking. Come back to the breath. Come back to the breath. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. I'm thinking. Oh, I don't know. I've just gone off on a trail of thought. All right, all good. come back to the breath. And that is the process. Just coming back to it.
Mm-hmm. So, Ben, if you had to kind of pick like one of the most important lessons you ever think you've learned, or if you had to maybe one of the most important lessons that you would be comfortable sharing, what do you think that would be? Like just one of the most important or most valuable, do you think, lessons you've ever experienced?
I think for me, my realization that everything positive in my life, everything positive in all my friends' lives, in the community I'm around, everything that seems to be positive in the my reality, whatever
Mm-hmm.
my version of reality is, all starts with me, you know, and so I think for whatever anyone is going through, whether it's hardships in business or relationship or trying to finding your passion or not you're in the hardships or whatever weight, whatever the situation is, to really realize that the ripple effect of positivity, the ripple effect of love, the ripple effect of a fulfilling life starts with yourself. And the more time, the more energy you put to understanding yourself, the more time and energy you put to bettering yourself as far as just becoming more aware of
Mm-hmm.
who you are and what is right for you, the more that will ripple to every aspect of your life. The more you'll see benefits in your business, the more success you'll be getting, the more success and whatever you'll be getting in your relationships with your friends, with being calm, with everything. And yeah, so it really it all starts with just becoming more aware of yourself and working on yourself.
Yeah,
I think
100% agree,
if
man.
we were to all work on ourselves first and foremost, then this world
Mhm.
would be a much, much better place.
Yeah. Well, most of us are out trying to fix everybody else. You know, we're out trying to fix 100 different people. And if we just fix, all we have to do is just fix one person. That's it. Like everybody just does one person and then we're all good. Because we're out trying to change, society and the rest of the world. And it's just like, let's just all focus on us. And then I think everything works
Yeah.
out. Um,
Yeah, it's so hard to change someone else and it's so hard to change the
yeah,
things on the outside. But what you can do is you can change yourself.
that's exactly right. Um, Ben, last thing, what do you think if you had something to say to yourself who was kind of going through these things with the addiction and this kind of thing, if you had to, like, knowing the things you know now and kind of where you're at now, if you had to say one thing or one, you know, maybe a couple things to this person, what do you think you would say to that younger version of yourself?
Uh, I think I'd probably say that everything that you've gone through, it's okay. And
Mm-hmm.
that while it sucks and it's hard and it's difficult, it doesn't have to stay like this. And there is hope to change. It's literally just a matter of believing that it can change
Hmm.
and to not give up on that belief that you can change and you can get better and you can work on yourself. Because for so many years I thought that this is just how I am,
Mm-hmm.
until there was that aha moment where it was, I don't need to be like this and this is not who I am. I don't have to be. And then all of a sudden in that moment everything else changed, And so if in that realization like my life could change, then it's just a matter of believing that just because I'm down now, just because this is where I'm at now, it doesn't mean that this is where you have to be tomorrow or the next day or next week.
I got you. I love that, man. Uh,
There's
I
always
got,
there's always time to change. There's always, doesn't matter what's happened to you. So there's always time to pick yourself up and change if you wanted to, literally every aspect of your life if you wanted.
yeah, that's incredible, man. I love that. Um, Ben, I do have to wrap up here, but man, I appreciate your time. I got to be respectful of your time, but we talked quite a bit here. So, and you've
Good
shared
luck
a
with
good
the
bit of
answer.
information, and I do appreciate it, man. I appreciate your time, and hopefully, maybe we can do this again in the future. Hopefully, I'll be a little bit more prepared because I didn't realize that I didn't realize that I was like as ignorant on this
Going
subject
down the
as I.
rabbit hole.
Man, I thought I knew a little bit about it. Like I thought, oh well, I've meditated before, but like this is interests me. But like, there's some things that we talked about here today that I like haven't thought about before, and I'm like, oh man, I need to educate myself here. So that's what I'm saying. I'm eager to kind of go back and listen to this over and get this information because I think there's some valuable things here.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you so much
But
for this opportunity. It's been amazing.
yeah, man, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Appreciate your wisdom. I'm gonna close this thing out. Let me explain to you about the upload situation, and I'll close this out. But I do appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, thank you.